Ladies and gentlemen, the holidays are here, and can we be honest with each other? Most gifts are boring, but not this year. If you'll just listen to Uncle Chael, I've got the perfect gift idea. Fume. This is a flavored air device. This is as unique as it is awesome. Fume is not a vape. There's no nicotine. There's no vapor. There's no batteries. You're just gonna get pure, guilt-free flavor. It's perfect for anyone looking to break that bad habit. Or even if you want to just enjoy something fun and relaxing. And with flavors like crisp mint and orange vanilla, trust me when I tell you, there's something for everyone. By the way, this isn't just practical, it's cool. It actually feels good in my hand, and it's made to fidget with. I don't know if you can hear as I'm turning this. It's perfect when you need something to do with your hands. And I haven't even gotten to the best part. This costs a third of what that bad habit does. So here's the play. Go to tryfume.com/Chael. When you get there, use the code Chael. That will get you a free fume topper when you do the journey pack, and it will give me a little credit. Plus, your name's going to be submitted where you might even win a gold-plated fume device. Yes, I said gold. This holiday season, you can give the gift of better habits. How would you like to have the best gift and you help somebody? Click on the link below, go to tryfume.com/Chael. Just make sure you thank me. Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, biggest fight in UFC history. Do you agree? And you would know, I mean, is it the fight that you're most looking forward to than any other fight? It's hard to deny. But let me ask you another question. Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, is it the biggest fight that our industry could make? It'd be very hard to believe that a certain fight is going to be the biggest fight in history if you could counter it by saying that you have a wish list that could outdo it right now. And of course I would be talking about Francis. Where does Francis fit into this entire thing? Or is that not a deal and that's just gone? Is there any fight that you could think of that's bigger? You get a magic wand. You're talking about the biggest fight in history, so I'm just asking you if hypothetically you could make a fight that if you were getting the box office in the gate, you were in charge of business-wise, could you come up with a bigger one? Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz in an MMA fight. Is that bigger? You have the interim champion versus the undisputed champion. That in and of itself should create for the greatest storyline that you have. It's a Hogan Warrior 1988 all over again, but we saw it in the form of Ciryl Gane and Francis Ngannou, and those two guys laid an egg. I do not mean the fight. I mean the business of the fight. They sucked in every possible way, from the live gate barely selling out to the pay-per-view, a needle that didn't move, to Francis Ngannou, who got a piece of the participation in business, complaining about his check. I mean, Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane is absolute proof that two idiots can screw up a fight. So, what do you do when it comes to Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall? You have an extremely disputed champion who is identified as the undisputed champion. You have an extremely respected interim champion who exists in the presence of an undisputed champion, which is rhetorically and linguistically impossible, but here we are. You then have a very helpful ingredient, which is Jon Jones saying, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. This story is very different if you don't have that element. And I appreciate that, but that can only go so far. I do believe that it would be Jon Jones's last fight. Now, that's just what I believe. If Jones is to get over on Aspinall, he is very unlikely to fight again. The amount of money that he would make for that night of participation, it's hard to get anybody to fight again. We have had countless stars, some of your favorite fighters, who have had some massive night of business, but they're paid on the amount of business it brings in. They get done with that competition, they come back to another one, and they got a lot smaller check. And they can't wrap their head around it. They cannot understand, how did I make X one night? I'm doing the exact same thing, and I'm not at least making it. They can't get their head around it, and they've left the sport. I could tell you big stars who have done that. They just can't understand. And believe me, if they can't understand, there's no way that Jon's going to get his head around it. And for that reason, in and of itself, for the fact that he would get a bigger paycheck to fight Aspinall than he would in a future opponent, that in and of itself lends towards he's probably going to retire. For what you guys want to see him do, for the appreciation and the acclaim that he would get, for legacy, even though nobody can identify, nobody can tell you what legacy means, but we all know it when we see it. And I do believe that would be Jon's last fight. If he was to lose, he's not going to come back with this young guy and let him do it again. There's a rule in fighting. And this is true in boxing too, and you can go and look it up, and you will not find an example around it. If an older fighter fights a younger fighter, and the younger fighter wins, and they rematch, the younger fighter will win again, only quicker. That is an absolute rule. So if Tom was to beat Jon, very unlikely to ever get that rematch. Not to mention you'd be setting up a potential for a trilogy, and these things are just unrealistic. And the reason I tell you that isn't a compliment to Jon or an insult to Jon. I'm sharing that with you that I think that could be one of the hooks. The idea of I don't want to fight him unless I get a whole bunch of money so that the outcome doesn't matter, it's not terrible. I mean, there was something kind of catchy about it. And the mere idea that Jon Jones might be looking at somebody close enough, there's something to that. But you also got some tongue-in-cheek, and you got to take it with a grain of salt, and you're not quite getting behind the curtain. Something very realistic is that Jon does call it a career after that fight. Now you got something. And I would like the question answered, though. If that's going to be the biggest fight in history, then in a hypothetical situation, you would not be able to create a bigger fight. So is Jon versus Tom officially surpassed Jon versus Francis? I think so. Jon versus Francis has really been glorified over time. I mean, you guys weren't dying to see it back when you could see it, and the UFC wasn't dying to make it back when they could make it. But somehow, over time, that's now... And that's an interesting concept. So Dana got asked over the weekend, by the way, if he'd make that fight. He said, yeah, 100%. And a headline came out. Dana White 100% guarantees he'll make the fight. That's not what I heard. What I heard, and in the context, Dana was saying that he 100% agrees, and he 100% was not going to offer any other fight. He was going to offer those two that fight. That's what I got out of it. But I do feel very confident in telling you that that will happen. Jon Jones does like your guys' opinion. He loves to argue with you. He loves to tell you that you're not being very nice to him, but he does love to have your opinion. And he has been craving for you to find somebody that at least perception-wise can beat him. That is actually a turn-on to him. It doesn't push him away from a fight. That brings Jon closer to it. And when Dana says he believes it could be the biggest fight, well, if anybody was going to have a guess who's got the right to that opinion and likely data to support and back it up, it would be Dana. But I just want to ask you just for fun, is that the biggest fight that you could hypothetically make up? The biggest fight you could hypothetically create in the entire industry? And it gives you pause, and that's a somewhat fun game to play. But I must tell you, if I was to play that game, the answer would be yes. Tom versus Jon is the biggest fight I could make in our entire industry.